I don't know if this is live or not yet. Okay, it appears to say I'm live now. So, me and Ryan were just talking, and yeah, I don't know if that was useful to anybody or not. He started following up on a long conversation we had last night, like not recorded. And hey, Grizz, how you doing, man? So I don't know if any of what we were just talking about was useful or not, but Ryan just suddenly had to go, and he said some people were still interested in chatting, so I said I would come back on if my wife said I was allowed. Yeah, she said I've got a bit of time before I have to do my chores, so here I am. And I don't know if people wanted me to talk more about what we were talking about or if they had questions. So if anyone has anything at all they want to talk about, yeah, I don't have any plan for what to say right now. Hey, Nolan, how you doing, man? I talk with Paul Vanderklag. Great stuff. How do you feel about it now that you've had a bit of time? Because you did a talk with Paul, then you talked with us, and that was sort of a big step for you, being introverted and stepping out like that. Now that you've had some time to digest it, how do you feel about doing those videos? Okay, sub can't quite make out the name, asked, what is behind me? That's a coyote head, if that's what you're asking about. There's a stuffed coyote. There's an antique dental model framed, and that's a poster of like a print of a plague doctor. Okay, so Andrew says talk about Alan Moore. Sure, I'll get to that in just a second. I just want. Okay, yeah. So Nolan feels good about it. Good, and I like from both the comments under ours and under Paul's. I think some people like appreciated hearing from you, and like I'd said to you because you sent me some of your poetry to read. Yeah, I liked your poetry as well. So if you're feeling good about these talks, I definitely think there's some value in it. So if you want to keep pursuing it, we'll definitely be glad to have you on again sometime. So you were quite anxious at first with it, and it subsided after a while. Good. I'm glad you feel good about it. And yeah, just let us know. Also, stick with the poetry. If you've written anything new, send it to us because I'd be interested to read it. And Grizz is saying free will is either true or a mercy from the truth. I avoid pondering it on those grounds. Yeah, and so actually this was one thing that I told Ryan last night that we didn't get to at all today. But I found for me, and like for me, it wasn't watching lectures will or reading anyone else's ideas on it. It was when I was in isolation, I began exploring that concept of free will on my own. And I found that when it first really clicked, the way from the logical point of view, like sort of something clicked for me that was very close to what Sam Harris has to say about it. When that first clicked, it hurt. I didn't like it. There's concepts that to learn them, and like learning in the sense of sort of to understand something truly, you kind of have to believe it to actually understand it. That belief and understanding are very similar and tied to each other. But I found that that realization that we may not have free will, like, was painful. It hurt. It caused headaches. It caused other physiological reactions. And it just, like, it hurt. That sort of hurt of when a friend betrays you or something, that there was emotional and psychological pain involved in taking it on. And when I first sort of clicked into that, I found that it was so painful that I would have to step back from the idea that there was no free will and just pretend that that argument didn't make sense to me. And I would just fall back into the way I felt about it. I would ignore thinking about it at all for a while. Then I would go back. It would be painful and I'd have to run from it again. And it took me a couple years of approaching the concept, handling it for as long as I could, and then needing to retreat into my own way of old way of feeling about it. Since then, I found a way to be comfortable within that space, and I found the larger space where you can recognize that there's no logical argument for free will and accept the more metaphysical, emotional, and intuitional backings that free will does exist, but must be part of some grander reality, that it's a type of mystery that is beyond our understanding. So somebody named We Are Victorious has wrote a bunch of things. So step 1 is stop calling yourself a lunatic or other things. Step 2 is to have a haircut that people are more comfortable with. Step 3, start listening to Sadhguru and others who promote becoming your true self. Step 4, stop calling yourself things you'd rather not be identified with. That is all. Don't listen to Sam Harris and other ideas. We have no idea how consciousness works with the physical world until we know it's all speculation. Okay, so to go back to the beginning, stop calling myself a lunatic. Now, I realize that for most people, they add negative connotation to lunatic. But it does not bother me. Also, any label that I accept, like I'm Canadian, I'm a man, someone wanted to say I was a punk. Sure, I'm a punk. I'm crazy, bipolar, lunatic. None of those labels limit me the way they do other people. The same way that I will answer to, do I believe in God? I'll answer yes, but then say I don't know what God is, that I'm still searching for that and I'm open-minded. I would say the same thing about insanity. Am I a lunatic? Yes. On the other hand, I don't know what exactly that is. I don't assume it's derogatory or necessarily an illness. As far as, I prefer the word lunatic greatly to the term mental illness. I find that much more disempowering. Although even that, if someone were to say to me, are you mentally ill? And I'm aware that that's how they frame it, I will just say, yes, I'm bipolar. But I don't accept the same meaning to that label. And so as far as like having a haircut that people are more comfortable with, I don't see in any way why I need that. For one thing, and I don't know how much you know about me, but I am just some crazy hermit. I live completely cut off from the world. It really doesn't matter to me too much what people think of my appearance because I barely interact with anybody at all. As far as the haircut I have, really the only person that it matters to me what I look like to is my wife, and my wife likes it. Yeah, Sadhguru and people promoting becoming your true self. Yeah, I've listened to a bunch of his stuff. I love the pursuit for the higher self, and absolutely. Yeah, and nothing that I call myself is anything you said. Stop calling myself things I'd rather not be identified with. I have no problem being identified with other lunatics. I have no problem being identified with any of the things I call myself. What's wrong with lunatics? I love lunatics. And then to say not to listen to Sam Harris, God, I totally respect that you don't like listening to Sam Harris, but I love listening to his thoughts on things. And also, that's not where I got any of my ideas about free will not existing. It's that when I encountered Sam Harris, I was like, hey, fuck, great. Somebody articulating this really well. And yeah, until we know what consciousness is, whether we have a soul or not, it absolutely is all speculation. And I don't feel like I'm right about anything. I'm aware that I don't know what's going on here. I don't know what I am. I don't know what this place is. And so it's about how do I interact with the world from this place of uncertainty. Okay, Grizz says Lunatic labels wards off the people who couldn't hear you anyway. Absolutely, yeah. Anyone who does any of what I said negatively, like, hey, I'm glad you're here. And if you don't like the word lunatic, if you don't think Sam Harris's ideas are good, like, that's perfectly fine. I'm not pushing anything on anyone here. And so there may be other discussions you'll enjoy more, because I could also take the other side of this completely. We'll definitely have discussions about becoming your true self. Also, discussions about how labels limit us are fantastic. That could be something really worth discussing more in depth. So to We Are Victorious, we can have different outlooks on life and see things differently and still love and appreciate each other. But yeah, I agree with you, Grizz, that lunatic, the use of that word probably, because I don't want to waste anyone's time. And it's perfectly fair for someone to say, why the fuck should I listen to this guy Mercury? He's insane. He's a heretic. You could say all kinds of stuff. And absolutely, I don't want anyone to listen to me who doesn't want to. And I'm not presenting myself like someone who should be listened to. I'm not telling anyone what to think or what to be. I'm just sharing what I think and what I am. Also, because of the comment on appearance here, that does tie into something that Peterson actually says in part of Peterson's whole thing about sorting yourself out. And I think perhaps it's part of the self-authoring. You plan the various parts of your life. And he said you should plan your appearance. And he talked about how by wearing a suit, you're sending a signal to people that you're playing the same game as everyone else. And when he whenever I heard him talk about that, I did think to my own appearance, even though I barely interact with the world. I thought on that. And to be honest, like the way I dress pretty much started when I was like 12. I got into like punk and metal and stuff. And I was very much drawn to these subcultures. And looking back on it now, I think for a lot of people who physically mark themselves out as different, so people who get a lot of tattoos or piercings, now, there can be a conformity aspect for sure, and there's all of that. But what drew me to it, and I think what draws a lot of people, or at least back in my day when I was a kid, what did draw a lot of people to punk was something's wrong with the world, that the part you're supposed to be playing and that it's taken for granted that you will follow through on didn't fit with me. And I just jumped into punk because I liked it. It was reacting to the sense of meaning, reacting to, like any kid, I didn't think deeply about any of this shit. So I still dress largely like I did as a teenager. But when I did think on it, after Peterson, appearance affects the world. I thought on it and decided that I still like the appearance I have, because if I were to dress, and I mean, I don't go out into public often at all. I'm very much cut off from the world. But when I do go out into the world, because of my appearance, people do not expect me necessarily to react normally. People approach me often with a sense of they're not sure how I will react. And since I am very different from the average person, I actually like the way it creates some uncertainty. And in fact, I feel like if I were to get the clean-cut look, get the most normal haircut, wear a suit, if I didn't have visible tattoos, like obviously it's too late with this hand, but if I didn't have any of that and I dressed perfectly normal, that feels like false advertising to me, because people would expect I'm playing the same game as everyone else, and I'm really not. A hermit as well, LOL. So a story that might make me less jealous, I get a guardian angel to talk to. Okay, so Grizz is saying, can you tell me a story that might make me less jealous? You get a guardian angel to talk to. I'm not sure what kind of story would do that for you. So anyone who doesn't know, Grizz is referring to the fact that I have a archangel I interact with regularly. Okay. And rather than even confronting that jealousy first, so you made a request for a story that alleviates that jealousy. Perhaps before we alleviate that jealousy, we could ask how that jealousy serves you. And again, something Peterson says is pay attention to what you admire, pay attention to what you look up to. And that gives you some idea of what, like if you look at somebody that you admire because of their honesty, you can use that admiration to realize you want to be more honest. So is the fact that you're jealous about that trying to inform you that you would like a deeper connection to your own spiritual guides? Oh, hey, I like this next question. Bakramu. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it, but I like this question. Why do you not consider yourself a failure? That's beautiful. And I don't consider myself not a failure. I've examined that. And what I'm aware of is, first of all, that failure is relative. It's like beauty. It's subjective. So I'm very aware and have no problem whatsoever with someone else expressing that from a modern mainstream point of view, if you are a realistic sort of Sam Harrison more type, although I don't quite want to plug him into this, but if you're from the point of view where success is functioning properly in the world, having a good job, our normal standards of success, no, I'm an absolute failure as a human being. And I was functioning not too bad until I got hit by a bus and became, but absolutely, I was going along through life, pulling my own way, working and whatnot. And I got hit by a bus, completely lost my mind. And now from a societal point of view, I am a failure. I'm on disability. I have no problem admitting or recognizing that from that perspective, I'm a failure. On the other hand, you could take a more spiritual look at things. And if I'm living out God's plan for me, which may perhaps be mysterious, perhaps I'm not a failure in that sense. Or you could look at it like, take into account the fact that I got hit by a bus and that I'm bipolar, and that what we consider success for a normal person, we obviously don't necessarily apply to a paraplegic or somebody so mentally undeveloped that they can't function. And somebody with a significant either medical reason or psychological reason, we change the standard of success or failure. And I, for myself, after my second cycle, after my second time of being institutionalized against my will and having psychotic breaks, I had to redefine success for me, to where from this point forward, my goal is to not kill myself when I'm feeling suicidal and to not end up institutionalized again. I had to lower the bar right down to that. And so based on my own goals I set for myself 10 years ago that I didn't know I would be able to do. Since then, I've never killed myself or attempted to. And since 2009, I have not been institutionalized. So I've been a success as far as those goals that I set. So we are, Victoria says, Sam Harris is intelligent. Agreed. Mind you, can be divisive. I don't know that he's trying to be divisive, but absolutely. Just the fact that some people will agree with him and disagree, he's caused some division. And then you say he is pro-Israel and Zionist. That's something that I can't comment on. I'm not going to discuss politics because I'm not informed enough to. I don't understand how the world works. I don't understand how the economy works. I don't understand how politics work. I don't know history. Whatever history I do, I don't know how true or not it is. Everyone's really happy to point out how the other side is biased and how their historical book is accurate and the other one is the false narrative. I'm very open-minded about all that, so I have no idea what the political situation is, and I don't know if Sam Harris is pro-Israel or Zionist, because I don't listen much to his politics. Also, I don't know whether being pro-Israel is a good or bad thing, so I can't comment on that at all. So Nolan's asking if I've ever read Alan Moore's Killing Joke. No, that's the Batman series he wrote, right? And this will tie back to Andrew said earlier that we should talk about Alan Moore. And sorry, Andrew, I got distracted by everything else. So we're going to go back to Alan Moore now. No, I haven't read Killing Joke yet, and I'd love to. On the other hand, Alan Moore's fucking fantastic. I love V for Vendetta. Watchmen, I first got that when I was like 11. I've read Watchmen like dozens of times. Alan Moore's Jerusalem, the just Magnus Opum he wrote, this huge like 1,200 page book, is fantastic. I can't say enough how good that is. And for Christmas, my sister got me Alan Moore's book, The Voice of the Fire or something like that. I haven't read it yet, but I've got that. Also, Alan Moore's, like, there's not enough of his shit. There's a few talks he's given that you can see and some interviews, but there's not nearly enough. And I've listened to everything I could hear from him. So actually, that's one thing that I'll just throw out to the universe right now. If synchronicity or if, yeah, some sort of weird coincidence allows that someone sees this who knows Alan Moore, I'd love to talk to the guy. His perspectives on magic and just life in general. I think there's not enough of that out there. And I'd love to talk to Alan Moore and share it with all of you guys. But Nolan, so I haven't read Killing Joke. Why do you bring up that one in particular? So I'm assuming you've read it. Is it that there's something particular in Killing Joke that was relevant to anything I'd said so far today? So We Are Victorious says, appearance has zero value outside how people will automatically put you in a box. Well, I see that perspective that our appearance does cause people to put us in boxes. I wouldn't quite say it has zero value other than that. For instance, my appearance doesn't cause my wife to put me in a box. But when my wife enjoys my appearance, that's a good thing. And our appearance, I think, can affect ourselves as well. But to a certain degree, we can focus on our appearance and how that causes other people to treat us and react to that. Although that's not a particular concern for me because I don't interact with people other than people who know me very well. But you live in a completely different world. I assume you have to interact with people all the time. And I assume that how you look affects how they treat you. Okay, so We Are Victorious says, I like your style too, but most people are very soft and will judge you harshly. They do it to me as well. Okay. Yeah. And so when it comes to that, I don't care how people judge me. Like, it's none of my business what other people think of me. I'm in no way. Yeah. And maybe this actually has to be said. I guess a lot of people are very concerned about how other people perceive them. And perhaps social media has just exaggerated this within us. But here on this channel, I am in no way trying to impress anyone. I'm not saying I'm right about anything, and I'm not trying to control anyone else's opinion of me. If someone else, if someone else considers that I'm not worth listening to, I have no problem with that whatsoever. And I won't, if someone says to me, you're not worth listening to, why should I listen to you? I won't even say they should. I'll say, no, if you don't find me worth listening to, absolutely don't listen to me. I'm just sharing who I am, and I'm in control of how I view myself. It's none of my business how anyone else views me. So I'm just not worried about that. Yeah, if people don't like the way I look, if people don't like the fact that I chain smoke, if people don't like the fact that I swear, fuck, I mean, who knows? If people don't like me because I'm white, if people don't like me because I'm a man, because I'm Canadian, because of that, that's perfectly fine. And I really don't want to bother anyone. Like with this channel, I have no desire to be seen by as many people as possible. My desire is that the only people who see me get some benefit out of it. I don't want to be annoying anyone. I don't want to be upsetting anyone. I'm only here for the people who want me to be here. I don't want to shove myself in anyone's face who doesn't like me. So the old God says envy is not jealousy. I'm not sure what that's in response to. Did I just say something? And yeah, envy and jealousy wouldn't be exactly the same thing. But also for everyone, we all use words differently. So how one person uses the word jealousy, they may not be meaning what you think when you use the word jealousy. And that both will be different from what I think. Okay, so Grizz says, if they're out there, I absolutely would prefer an experienced connection with my spirit guides. Okay, so one, I'm not saying they're out there. For me, they're there, but whether they're out there or in there, I'm not sure. But again, this is something, so again, to go back to Alan Moore. Alan Moore from his graphic novel From Hell had the line, the one place that gods and demons inarguably exist is within the minds of men, where they are real in all their grandeur and monstrosity. And again, the word man there is meant to be inclusive. Yeah, there it's meant to mean mankind, humankind. So the one place that gods and demons inarguably exist is within our experience. Now, whether they're a component of our own psyche or whether they are a phenomenon that exists without us really doesn't make any difference as to whether or not they're real, because our psyches are real. So also, I don't know, because I think often when it comes to this whole like Harris versus Peterson, I don't know if that to a certain degree is just personality trait. So the same way that, from what I understand, certain people consider obeying authority a virtue. Like they just inherently, and that this is more common with people on the right of the political spectrum, they'll be high in conscientiousness and they're more likely to feel that respect for authority is like a virtue. And I recognize now that some people have that. I don't have that inherently. Some people do not have a sense that that's a moral virtue. So I don't know if this whole believing in gods or even wanting a connection to our guides, perhaps it's just that for Richard Dawkins and these people on the other side, they don't have that internal call. So they can't seem to recognize that other people do. But at least some of us, if not all of us, have that sense that there is God, gods or angels or guides. And for those of us who do have it, it can be worth pursuing. Now, there are just absolutely so many ways to connect to your spirit guides, whether you're going to look at native traditions, whether you're going to look at Jungian psychology and like the way he connected to archetypes to learn from them, whether you want to use magic or pretty much any spiritual tradition, even if you're strictly Christian. Christianity is full of reaching out to your guardian angels. So there are all kinds of meditative ritual practices that you can do to connect to your spirit guides. And yeah, so I'm going to leave that at that for now, but definitely we can discuss more in the future. For those of you who are interested in connecting to your spirit guides, we can discuss more how to do it. But I would say the easiest thing, first of all, is everything else aside, just put out an invitation. What you just said to me, Grizz, like whatever way you frame what your spirit guides are, or even if you're uncertain what they are, just say to the universe, I don't know if spirit guides exist or if you do, whatever. But I am officially asking my spirit guides to step forward and reveal themselves to me. And that alone might be enough to get you going. So Gloff says, "Sup, Looney Tune? Hey, how you doing?" So talk about Zizekian theology. I don't know enough about his at all to say anything. I don't know enough about that. If you know about that, you should come on sometime and explain it to me. But nothing is coming to mind to say about that at the moment. So someone's saying, do I do physical exercise on a regular basis, indoor cycling, push-ups, etc.? If not, why? It's been heavily proved that it helps a lot with mental illness. So first of all, absolutely. That is wonderful advice to anyone with absolutely any kind of mental or emotional problems. Exercise is good for you. Nobody seems to argue that. I agree 100%. Do I get physical exercise on a regular basis? From spring all the way through the summer, I get tons of physical exercise. In the winter, I don't at all. I shut right down, and that is because I get suicidally depressed. And to the point where I have a physiological reaction, like I'm blanking on the medical term for it now, but some people with depression do just get extreme lethargy. You just can't, like it's hard enough to drag yourself out of bed in the morning. In fact, for me, like at my worst in depression, it was so hard to motivate myself to do anything at all. And so this, like I'm going back 10 years ago, but at one point I was so depressed that it was too much work to go and take a shit. And so I would get stomach cramps. I'd get like where my stomach hurts, and I still couldn't build up the energy to go to the bathroom. And I would sometimes like go to bed with stomach pains because I needed to go poop. And it was still too much work to do that. I would just lie down and suffer all night in pain because going and doing it seemed like it took too much physical exercise. So that's how bad my depression can get. So no, in the winter, I get to where I can't exercise at all. And even though I know it would be good for me, I just can't manage myself to do it. So I try to get back into it. I try to keep it going as long as I can. And then I try to get back into it again in the spring. This year, I've pushed myself a little earlier than usual. So I have already, so out of the whole sorting myself out, attitude, what am I working on? I did a couple weeks ago start trying to get myself back into the habit of getting some exercise. And I'd said this in another video at one point. Someone was asking something about advice on getting exercising. And for me, when I'm first trying to get myself to do a few push-ups again, what I do at first is rather than setting even something as high as you've got to do 10 push-ups, or I try to get myself for a few days just to do 3 or just to do, a really, really small amount. And so I have been pushing myself to just not even to push myself hard, but to create the habit of doing a few push-ups a day, most days. And I've managed that I've been doing at least 5 days a week of doing a little bit, Not too much, but enough that it just starts getting me back into the habit. And once I've created the habit of doing a little bit, then I push myself to do a little more. But once summer comes around, I get lots of outdoor exercise, and it's not too hard for me to get myself exercising through the summer. Okay, so yeah, B Daddy raps that, yeah, I have a yearly cycle, and I will often plan things out the way like other people plan out a day. In the morning, I'm going to do this. In the afternoon, I'm going to do this. Evening, I'm going to do this. I treat each year in a way a bit like a day. So the way you might say, okay, I'm going to get up in the morning and exercise. I'm going to do all the dishes, clean up in the house. Then I'll, go to work. I plan in the spring. I'm going to try to get myself exercising. I'm going to try to get my house cleaned up. And that's also something I've been working on at the moment. It's like when I joked before that at some point my wife's going to say I have to do chores. It's because, yeah, my wife's going to come over at some point and we're going to get back to work trying to clean up my house. Brutally hard for me. It's like so difficult. But at the moment, I'm also working on cleaning up my house. But I will kind of set plans for a year for myself. In the spring, I'm going to work on this. Over the summer, I'm going to do this. Fall for me is kind of like the evening. Where things start winding down. And then the winter for me is like nighttime. I also, in a magical sort of mythical sense, in many ways, I die every winter and am born again every spring. So, yeah, I plan out my years the way other people plan out their days often. Okay, so do I believe I am actively doing my best to alleviate my mental issues? Yes, I'm doing my best to alleviate my mental issues, although I will put practicality at the expense of my own mental well-being when I feel able to do that. So for instance, yeah, I definitely am doing my best. And I would understand completely how someone could look at me and be like, there's no way you're doing your best with like how you're living. But they would be comparing me to them in some way. And if you compare me to me at my worst, how far I've come is ridiculously far. At first, I was trapped in a cycle of losing control, total psychosis, dragged into mental hospitals against my will, causing tons of problems in the real world, then going through suicidal depressions that I barely survived. So you would have to know how far down I was to be able to see how far I've come. But I'm definitely pushing myself as hard as I feel I'm able to. And that's just being realistic about what I'm able to do. Yeah, I take it really easy on myself about a lot of my failures because pushing too hard at too much at once makes it all fall apart. Okay, so Nolan's saying I wrote an essay about about Batman and the Joker, and that was one of the stories I read. I thought it was great, and it helped me understand a lot. Okay, there can be a lot of profound wisdom caught up in our fiction, and Batman and the Joker are great archetypes. And I love both those characters as well. So you say you wrote an essay about it. If you don't mind, it's totally fine if you don't want to. But if you're interested, I'd love to read it. So if you want to send that to the Sorting Myself Out Zero, if you feel like sharing it, I would, yeah, love to read your essay about what you got from examining Batman and the Joker. So the old god says, words have meaning. I am a sublimated psychopath and a bit of a pedant. Yes, words have very, very powerful meaning. And to tie it back to Alan Moore again, if you look at his views on magic, it gets in to a certain degree he does talk about a level of reality that other people may not be aware of. But in another sense, a lot of what Alan Moore says is just realizing how powerful words are to begin with. And for me, even more important than any sort of rituals or anything like that was realizing that language itself is magical, that art is magical, that every word is magical. And for me, the earliest steps of practicing magic were not things people would consider magical. So it was, for instance, being mindful of every thought that appears in my mind, everything, and not assuming those thoughts are me or that I agree with them. So choosing or denying every thought. So if I'm depressed and the thought pops in my head, life is fucking meaningless, I should kill myself, I consciously choose, hey, that thought occurred to me. I am not following that thought. I feel emotionally as though life is meaningless, but I'm aware it's not. The other was to realize the power of words. And even, I don't know if anyone noticed, but when Grizz had asked me about contacting his guardian angel, I sort of paused for a minute. And I don't even remember exactly what I said, but I said something like, just you making this declaration may be enough for them to contact you. The reason it looked like I was thinking so carefully there is because I was aware of the power of magic. I was aware that there was a chance that as a magician, I would be actively creating that, because what I said to him is, you may. I gave him permission to connect to them. I suggested it was possible. And that simple act, and if Grizz does follow up and say to the universe, I want a connection to my guardian angel, please present yourself to me. That combined with what I said, those two sets of words, may have more power than it would have just on their own. So I tried to be very careful how I worded that to actually provide magical support to Grizz. I also had the thought of, I could offer to do further magic to help him assist. But when that thought occurred to me, I thought, no, I don't know Grizz well enough. Also, I trust his angels. And if he needs extra help in the future, I'll become aware of it. But right now, he needs no help beyond me trying to put that tiny bit of magic into the suggestion, paying attention to how I worded it. So I was trying to give him some magical support there in connecting to it. Okay, so Nolan says, I'd love to share what I learned at some point. So yeah, that's another thing is, I think just about everyone, well, no, not just about everyone, but tons of people love Batman and the Joker. Those are great characters. And if you've managed to connect that to psychological or physiological or philosophical or societal insights, maybe you could come on and talk to me and Ryan about it. I'd love to, we could maybe discuss your essay. I think that'd be great. Okay, and so the old gods, it was saying when words have meaning, he was quoting Grizz as jealous to get a guardian angel to talk to. Oh, fuck, okay, yeah. Now I understand everything you said before, old god. Sorry. I'm jumping around and looking at too much isolated. That all makes sense to me now. Okay, cool. So, Bakramu, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing, I'm not sure how to say that. What is my deepest fear? That's an easy one. Institutionalization, imprisonment. That's my deepest fear. I can have, if I'm under stress, I'll get horrible night terrors about some government agency, hospital workers, anyone coming to take me away. But whether it's locked up in a mental institution, a prison, some fucking government lab, captured by aliens to be experimented on, imprisonment is powerfully my deepest fear. Hold on a second. I just got to check this. Okay, so my wife says she's going to be here in half an hour, and then I'm going to have to get to work. So So I still have a little bit of time. But yeah, and I've gotten to the point where I'm really not afraid of dying. I thought I was going to die when I got hit by the bus and had I didn't actually die, but I had a weird sort of near-death experience where time froze. I had a certain amount of life review and all that. Then spent enough time suicidally depressed, just wishing for death. And then even leaving aside suicide, I'm not afraid of death anymore. And I had another time once where I thought I was going to die, and I got through it. But looking back on it, I noticed how that second time there wasn't even an initial panic. So when I got hit by the bus, that experience I had, which isn't the kind of near death like I died and was brought back, but I had that moment like some men have had in World War II, where they see the shell come down from, and it lands right in front of them. So they're sure they're going to die because there's a bomb coming down, but then it ends up being a dud and they survive it. Many of them found that they had profound experiences as well in that moment of believing they're going to die. And rather than trying to explain that all myself, I would say, if you look up when, what's his name? The Jay and Silent guy, Kevin Smith. Look up when Kevin Smith went on Joe Rogan after his heart attack. And Kevin Smith talks about both his own, like going into surgery, thinking he wasn't going to come out. Also, his mother had a near-death experience that he talks about. And he says how, for both of them, once you get to that point where you actually are sure you're going to die, and I think for his mom, it was the full near-death where she had died and got brought back. I might be wrong. But you'll find the majority of people who have a near-death experience of any sort after that aren't afraid of dying. Dying's wonderful. And actually, when I saw Jordan Peterson in Ottawa last summer, there was a short Q&A after, and he called on me, and that was what I asked him about. I pointed out that, like, in his discussions with Sam Harris and everything, he takes it for granted. He's allowing the baseline assumption that death is bad. And we're building so many discussions on top of death is bad. But I really don't think death is bad. I think death's a blessing. And when I asked him about that, like, he agreed with me that perhaps we shouldn't be seeing death as bad. And he started into talking about how life itself is just all a function of so many other deaths to keep us alive. And the whole phenomenon of how psychological deaths can be good, and tying into the whole Phoenix myth. And it seemed like we were right on the verge of getting somewhere good. And then his manager called like that was time up for the questions. So I didn't get to go further with him on that. But I'd love to talk to him more about death if I ever got the chance. So I'm not afraid of death. I don't enjoy pain, but I wouldn't say I'm afraid of it. But yeah, that all came from my greatest fears, being locked up. All right, Andrew's saying, I recently realized how powerful words are in my dreams. When I have lucid dreams, I can command them and shape the dream with my words. If I am flying and I say go faster, I go faster. Yeah, that's interesting. And your abilities with lucid dreaming, Andrew, are like amazing. Like, you and I have talked about that much more privately than you've ever discussed publicly. That skill level you have is so rare. And yeah, so I think also now that you see how powerful your words are in your dreams, pay attention and see how powerful they are in your daily life as well. Yeah, so if you experiment with that, the next time you're working on something and you're trying to fly through it, what happens? Can you do that in your waking life? So if you're behind in work, can you put yourself in that same mindset you had in the dream, where you're like, I want this, I can simply say it and it will happen. So, although be very careful what you wish for, obviously, but yeah, I'd be interested to hear more in the future about how much you think that applies to the real world. Okay, so question from Bakramu. Do I ever engage in bad behavior on purpose? I mean, not because of laziness or because of habit, but as an actual choice. Okay, so if what you're saying is, do I ever try to actively make the world worse? No, not anymore. I used to. Resentment, a lack of an ability to forgive. We often, whether it's passive aggressive or many ways, I have in the past actively tried to make things worse before. But no, I don't do anything to make things worse. I make all my decisions, or at least not that I'm aware of consciously. And I do watch for that very, very hard in myself. I've decided that God is good, existence is meaningful, and I will work towards the good. However, if it comes to something where we're not talking morally good or bad, I will fucking eat a cookie if I want to eat a cookie, and I'm aware that's not good in that whole sense, but I also won't feel guilty about it. Like a bit of sugar is not going to hurt me. So I will indulge certain things that I don't feel are morally wrong, but I'm always trying to work from the good. And so what do I do as work? Well, perhaps you could say I do this now. I could see the frame. Like, I'm not sure. Am I working doing this or not? I'm not making any money for it, but still. So if it's strictly money wise, what do I do for work? Nothing. I'm on permanent disability for bipolar disorder. I am like legally insane, and the government is kind enough to provide disability. Also, the government is not like at one point I was on like just disability, but I went through government. I worked with psychologists and stuff to try to get back into the world. I retrained as a tattoo artist and started pursuing that. But my bipolar is so severe, and stress is what makes me lose control. After my second breakdown, the advice from the psychiatrists, psychologists, and everyone was, okay, don't try to get back to work. You've got to focus on taking care of yourself. And the government put me on permanent disability. It's not luxurious to live off of, but so you could say I'm a professional lunatic. I'm so good at being crazy that the government pays me to do it. But also I have taken this on again. I'm not making any money off of this, but this is me trying to be of service. So in a way, I suppose I do think of the channel as work now, especially the channel's taken a lot more than I thought it would to do, both for me and for Ryan. I also thought for Ryan that it wouldn't take as many hours as it is taking. So the channel is very much like a part-time job. But no, all my money comes from disability. Okay, so Grizz is I think this is directed at Andrew. I always wanted you to cover your lucid dreaming more when you were running the channel, Andrew. And yeah, me and you talk about that all the time privately, and it's always fascinating. So if you ever do want to come back on, Andrew, and devote an entire conversation just specifically to lucid dreaming, we would all love to have you on for that. So Gloff has been seeing the same numbers show up at his job, and he's an accountant. For example, the number 1363 indicates a discrepancy for me. Okay, interesting. And yeah, I've personally found a lot of people will find this silly, but I've personally found there is something to synchronicity and coincidence, especially if you're an intuitive or spiritual person, and particularly if you're working hard on being a good person. I find your synchronicities increase. So I definitely think that's always something worth paying attention to. And especially if you can decipher a certain amount of meaning. So if you find that the number 1363 indicates a discrepancy, do you mean that when that number comes up, you look back to double check your work because it indicates there might be a mistake? But aside from the specifics of what your synchronicities are, at least for me personally and some other people I've talked to, I find that if you notice synchronicities going up aside from the individual messages of the synchronicities, I take overall an increase in synchronicities as a sign that I'm on the right path and that I should be watching for what the universe is presenting me, and while discriminating, of course, leaning towards saying yes to things and saying yes to the universe. But just, you notice your synchronicities going up, you're dreaming things and then it happens. I would look for, is that God or an angel placing their hand on your shoulder and trying to guide you forward. So the old God says, do I consider myself an adept? I don't know. Yeah, I think that's beyond me to even classify myself. So I will leave it up to the higher realms and people wiser than me to say what I am. I just am what I am, and I don't know which level of development it would be appropriate to label myself as. So I have no idea. And so Grizz says the etymology of professional is very telling. Yeah, I don't know that. I have never thought of the root words of the source of the word professional. So Ash B says, hi, Andrew and Merc. I enjoyed your original discussions, like the way the channel is going. All right, great, Ash. Thanks for some feedback. And yeah, and this will apply to everyone then as well. The people who've taken the time to leave comments, or definitely like Nolan and Rob and James, who've gone so far as to come on and have talks. But I really appreciate the feedback. And for me doing this channel, I don't have some goal of what I want out of it. I'm trying to be of service here, and the people who've taken the time to comment that they find it beneficial, especially people who've taken the time to give specific feedback that this helped me or that helped me. I really appreciate the feedback, and anyone who's given any is partially responsible for why I've continued doing this, because if I'd come on and started doing this and nobody wanted it, I just would have stopped because I didn't have my own to pursue here. All right, Andrew says, synchronicity yesterday. Told me she had her first out-of-body experience that very morning, not knowing what it was. Wow. What caused the out-of-body experience? Like, was she meditating? Was she doing some sort of practice? Or did she have some sort of spontaneous out-of-body experience? Which, for the first time, I am like totally caught up at the end, so there's not a whole list of comments. I may have missed some along the way, but from what I can see there, I'm caught up now, and I'm very curious to hear what caused that out-of-body experience. So I'm going to wait a moment and see. Fascinating. And I also don't know if you've been paying attention the whole time, been back and forth at all, but someone, and I'm forgetting now already who, maybe Gloff or Grizz, someone else had commented that they really like hearing about your lucid dreaming. So if you ever do feel like coming back on, and again, I know you don't want to get into too much personal stuff, we could stay away from that completely and just have you on sort of as an expert of lucid dreaming and stick specifically to that topic if you're ever interested. So Grizz is saying, the way I explain how learning my own cycles can help a lot of people. Yeah, possibly me discussing how I deal with my extreme emotional states could be helpful for people. Also, I've thought that just me talking casually about being bipolar could be helpful for some people. Because for me personally, My first cycle through, I couldn't handle it at all. Like crazy. In my first manic period, I didn't accept that I was crazy. I was magical and it was the end of the world and everyone else just didn't understand reality. My first depression, I was embarrassed of the whole thing. I wanted my life back, which I couldn't have. It's also first going crazy. I was married when I was younger and life. And when I went crazy, that whole life disappeared. And my first wife broke up with me when I was in the mental hospital the first time. And just everything collapsed and I couldn't deal with it at all. And because there was a bus accident involved, like injury, physically mixed with my going crazy, the doctors and stuff weren't sure if I was bipolar, or they said that it was possible I could simply go through a single cycle as some form of post-traumatic stress disorder, and that I might be able to get over it. So the goal after my first cycle was to get back to normal. And I did all sorts of, therapy and whatnot. Also, I started pursuing like a career as a tattoo artist and was trying to build a new life, but very much just wanting to move on, wanting not to be crazy, to get back to normal. When my second cycle hit, out of control again because I was in denial about it. Like I didn't want to be crazy. I'd worked so hard to get back to normal. So as my second bout of mania began, I was just in denial about it because I couldn't face it. So because I didn't face it, it got out of control. Same thing, horrible end of the world psychosis, long 2-year depression. And during that depression, that second time, it was like I knew I was crazy now. It was really hard not to kill myself. My first life was gone. My second attempt to rebuild it didn't work. And I had to deal with the fact that I was crazy. And that was like, I don't even know how to explain how difficult that was for me to accept. It was like, no, I did not want to be a fucking crazy person. And I really, really badly wanted to kill myself. The one big turning point for me was my sister burned me a CD, and it was a live performance of the band Choking Victim. It was them on a radio station. So the album's called Christmas with the Victim. And it's that around Christmas, Choking Victim were on some New York radio station. And they were playing a few live songs. They were playing songs and then taking audience questions. And at one point, Sasha, the bass player for Choking Victim, and I think the radio host brought up that he was bipolar and that he was involved in mental health groups and that he'd written articles on being bipolar. And I loved the band's Choking Victim and Leftover Crack. But at that point, I didn't know any of those personal details about DeBrol. But hearing him, he's on the radio, and he was just so casual about the fact that he was bipolar. And all his bandmates were treating him with respect. The guy interviewing him was interested in his experience. It wasn't, nobody was putting Sasha down. It was just, everyone was like, yeah, he's bipolar the same way that, hey, he's tall and he's, Chinese. It was just a fact about him that didn't matter. And that hit me so fucking hard because I could look up to that band to a certain degree. Not that I idolized them in any way, but they were someone I could look up to if I was wanting to be in that frame of mind. And the fact that he was just casually discussing his bipolar, and a bunch of the stuff he's written is available free to download. At the point that my sister gave me the CD, I didn't have internet. I didn't have a phone. I didn't have a car. I never left my house. It was just and I didn't have people visit me either, often at all. My parents would just drop off my supplies every so often. But I told my mom about the CD, and I said, he said, here is where you can go to print off his stuff. So I asked her to print out some of his material. She brought it to me. And when I read the first article he wrote, not sure what it was called now, something like Bipolar World, but Sasha had a total psychotic break as well. I think the police picked him up wandering in the subway tunnels in New York. He was institutionalized and whatnot. But after that, he wrote an article about the experience, and reading the stuff he wrote and some other things like led me to reading other things. That was the beginning of me being able to accept it myself. Was if Sasha's crazy and he's someone that I don't look down on, maybe there's a way for me to be okay with being crazy myself. And so because that had such a large effect on me, I do think that could be one service I might be able to offer, is an example of someone who's just going to plainly talk about being crazy without being embarrassed. And hopefully, if anyone else needs to see that example and that I'm the right person to be that example, hopefully they find this stuff, because just accepting what it is allows you to deal with it. Trying to be in denial about it or run away from it, you're never going to learn how to deal with it properly. So Andrew's been having so many synchronicities, it's incredible, and he says he'll be back on for sure. Okay, excellent. So Grizz says, like, if they appended, you're going to have cycles when they hand out the diagnosis. So helpful. Yeah, that's one thing, is if, and again, every person's unique, and not everyone who's bipolar is going to have cycles that are like mine. But if you do have a condition that involves cycles, whether it's monthly, yearly, or some people go through daily cycles, or for some other people, there's more of a randomness to it. But if you are one of the people who has a cycle, it's good just to notice it and then try to plan your life around it. Like, for instance, say someone has a monthly cycle where they know they're always depressed in the middle of the month. If that's really the case, I can, of course, work to rehabilitate yourself and get over it. But while you're trying to improve it, be aware of it and just don't plan shit for that time period where you know you're depressed. If you know around the middle of every month, or if you know that every winter or whatever it is, you're more depressed or your anxiety's worse, and it's always a struggle to go to social functions during that time period, take it easy on yourself. Don't think ahead. Is that a time when I'm most likely to be having problems with this? And if it's the middle of the month every month that you're too depressed to go out, don't plan shit for the middle of the month so that you put yourself in that position of having to cancel and feel shitty about it. So Little Baby says WSP. I have no idea what that means. I don't know what WSP is. I'm sorry, I can't respond to that properly. So Andrew says, can I view what I went through the lens of JP, specifically as maps of meaning view of the life story, going from order into chaos? Yeah. And for me, in a lot of ways, I feel like, I don't know, like a chaos walker or something. I can see that my life involves far more chaos than other people. And not just the more practical, example of chaos, the metaphorical, like chaos being the unknown, chaos being the underworld, chaos being all that which is beyond our understanding. I am much more tied into the chaos of reality. And I do feel very much like the metaphorical map of where I am is like the old-timey map where you've got the edge of the world and it says, here there be dragons and there's sea serpents, and that's where the scary tribes of the dog-headed men live. And it's that edge of the world. Like, that's where I live. I'm right on the edge of the world. Or in Alan Moore's Jerusalem, he talks about the Vernals, and that the Vernals are the ones assigned to watch the corners. And they're the ones, then the Vernals are a family line in the book, and it's a family line with a history of mental illness. But in the book, they're the ones that their family inheritance of their duty is to be the ones to guard the border between this world and the next. I feel like I very much live on the edge of this world, and that I live where it says, here there be dragons, in that chaos is roaming around me far more than it is around most people. So I can see it through that lens. Yeah. And like Peterson will talk about slaying his dragons, overcoming the chaos. I don't feel like I'm slaying dragons. I feel like I'm taming them and learning to live with them. Or if not taming them, making friends with them and learning how to interact with the chaos to the best of my ability. And the old god says normal is highly overrated. Yeah, I could agree with that. So Grizz says, finally heard the Canadian when you said, what? Is that so effing hard? I said so fucking hard. Okay, so my Canadian accent came out. Cool. Where are you from, Grizz? Gloth. My girlfriend saw ghosts the other day. It was benevolent, she said. Cool. And how did she take it? Even if it was benevolent, did it still freak her out? Or was she happy about it? But no, that's cool. It's always fun to meet someone like Casper. A friendly ghost can be a lot of fun. Okay, dust to dust. I just found out we never landed on the moon. Damn, was that a kick in the balls? Okay, I have no idea about that. In that I don't know whether we went to the moon or not. I'm not that interested in looking into conspiracies like that. And sorry, this is in no way putting you down for being interested. I'm just explaining my reaction is, how am I going to go figure that out for myself? Like, even if I went to NASA and interviewed people directly and tried to figure it out myself, when it comes to things like, did we land on the moon or not? I don't know what to believe anymore. Yeah, I just really don't know what to make of any of that shit. And in fact, if anything, when things like, did we land on the moon come up, or like now flat earth becoming more popular, more so than being concerned about who's right about each individual thing, I'm somewhat concerned about this phenomenon. Our ability to trust each other and us being trustworthy is what's gotten us here. Like, we've made it by how trustworthy we were. And being able to trust each other is an incredibly precious natural resource. We have all lied and fucked things over so badly. We've filtered things through our own bias, even being self-aware enough to realize we're doing it. We've rewritten history over and over. We've created these complex government and economic systems. I don't know how any of it works, and it's unfortunate that we've lied to each other so much that we can't even come to an agreement on whether we landed on the moon or not. I just find all of that very unfortunate, and I don't know how to shift through the details of all that bullshit personally. But yeah, I would love it if we were honest enough that when we got false information, it was at least because people were mistaken and not because they were outright lying. But, and it's gotten worse with, you know, the whole fake news shit. It's like, we are just destroying an incredibly precious natural resource here, the ability to trust each other. And so I don't know if we landed on the moon or not, but if you now believe that we didn't, and you once believed we did, I can see why that would feel like a kick in the balls. It sucks to be lied to, and it sucks to have to recreate your frame of reality over and over to find out you have been lied to and to have to reorganize your understanding of reality. Okay, so Grizz says, I read WSP as what's up. Oh, okay. So if people use that to mean what's up, I wasn't aware of that. So sorry. Okay, so hey, little baby, what's up? I'm doing good. Just here chatting with people, and thanks for joining us. How are you doing? So the old god says, practicing Yang Tai Chi Chuan. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right. While listening to the music of Frank Zappa helps me interact with society without leaving a string of bodies in my wake. That's awesome. Good for you for, like, and I don't know what you're alluding to there. I don't know what your bad behavior would be if you didn't take the time to do those practices, but good for you to realize that you need a certain outlet or way of dealing with life. And that sounds awesome. Just, yeah, anyone who can find any sort of practice that helps them deal better with the world. Yeah, especially something great like that. You don't even need fucking drugs to do it. Good for you. So Boy Meets Wart says, great content lately, guys. Cheers. Thanks a lot. And you, I've noticed, have taken the time to comment under a few things. I really appreciate that feedback. It's also you're one person who gives very specific examples sometimes of what you find helpful. So I've really enjoyed or really appreciated your feedback. The old god says, undermine trust and you undermined people's ability to reason. Yeah, making them easily led. Absolutely. It's unfortunate we've chipped away at that so badly. And that's one of the things I like about both Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris. Aside from the things which they disagree on how to proceed, they both agree that the value of trust and that all of us, whether we believe in God or not, from both sides of the argument, Sam Harris and Jordan both make excellent points about the importance of honesty. And no matter what else either of those guys are wrong about, I will always be grateful to them about the work they've done on honesty. All right, there's no other comments, and I don't remember how long ago my wife told me. Yeah, my wife's probably going to be here any minute, so I will take a minute if anyone has any last questions or a final comment. I'll give it a minute to see if anyone posts anything. Otherwise, I think I'm going to shut this off for now, and I don't know when I'll be back. Oh, also, I don't know how often people want me posting. This is something that me and Ryan had said in recently. Ryan, in one of the live streams, had said to me that he didn't know he was posting too much that day. He'd put up 2 or 3 things in one day. And I told him that I didn't know how often people want shit. But, well, so for one thing, if it's ever going to be hard on me, like if it's not good for my mental or emotional health, I won't push myself to come on if I don't feel up to it. On the other hand, there have been nights where I've thought, like, I could go on, but I just honestly don't know how often people want me coming on. So if anyone has any feedback on that, like, yeah, you can just let me know. Because I don't know if late tonight, would I feel like popping back on? I have no idea. Or tomorrow. But I honestly don't have a sense. Is it annoying if I come on too often? Or are there people who just want me to come on as often as I want to, and they'll just tune in when they feel like it, not when they don't? But if anyone has any feedback on that, like, because I was just live now, should I wait a minimum amount of time before coming live again? Or do I just go live anytime I feel like I might be able to? So Boy Meets Wart says, coming in late from the free will convo. Hope you guys pick that one up again. Yeah, and I'm always interested to discuss that topic. So I'm sure me and Ryan will discuss it more. Also, yeah, you appear to be a regular viewer. If there's ever a topic you have a lot to say about, like, we put out the invitation repeatedly that if anyone wants to discuss their sorting themselves out, to write into us. But also, if anyone just feels particularly passionate about a certain subject and feel they have something to contribute, if you ever want to come on with me and Ryan and discuss free will, let us know. And so I think it's sortingmyselfout0@gmail, but I'm sure Ryan has that somewhere. But anyone who wants to talk to us for any reason, just go ahead and write into the channel. And yeah, who knows, maybe we could have you on one day if you're interested. Yeah, and you say, but make Ryan take a vacation. Well, he's on vacation right now. He's got like this whole week off, and I told him he doesn't need to look at the channel. He doesn't need to contact me at all. Ryan just has this internal workhorse that sometimes even when he tries to take an evening off, or I'll talk to him one night, he's worked so hard all day. So I tell him, tomorrow, take it easy, finish up that paper. Don't do anything for the channel. And I'll wake up and he's posted some fucking video. So he's got this real drive to work that sometimes even when he tries to take downtime, he just can't do it. He just springs right back to working. Okay, so Ashby says 1 to 3 videos per week is cool. Okay, so thanks for that feedback. What's coming up for the channel? So we do have a conversation that we recorded with James. Ryan just hasn't finished editing that yet to put up. What else do we have in the queue that'll be coming up soon? Also, there you can look forward to, we found an exceptional clip of Eric Weinstein, a brief one that we'll be posting, like the same way that we occasionally put up the Jordan Peterson. Oh, Ryan's working on editing the conversation he had, like the conversation he filmed between Tim Freak and Ken Wilber. So there's a longer conversation between the two of them that we'll be posting soon. Beyond that, I will appear randomly live at points. So will Ryan, and I don't know if we have anything else specific coming up that I'm not thinking of. So Ash says it doesn't get annoying if there's lots of content, can always pick what we watch. Okay, that was what I thought too, because that's the way I am with channels. If some channel's putting out a ton of material, and even if it's like, because often, you know, I'm subscribed to Joe Rogan, but like sometimes 3 and 4 months go by where I don't watch anything at all. Then there might be some other month where I'm watching them every other day. So I also thought that like just putting out as much content as we have to give was the right thing to do, and people will only watch as much as they want. But Ryan was concerned that too many notifications would annoy people. So I appreciate that feedback. Okay, Dust to Dust is saying, do what works for you. I seem to catch you at random. Okay, cool. Thanks for that feedback. Also, one thing Andrew had said to me was Ryan had said, or no, not Ryan, Andrew. Fuck. Okay, looking at this just totally distracted me. Wait, what the fuck was do what? Oh, I seem to catch you at random. Okay, so yeah. Andrew said also that he was enjoying my random live streams, but one suggestion he had was, he said, if I could pick one night a week where I was going to go live at the same time every week, so that if there's someone who's always catching, like watching Lunatic live later and just never seems to be online when I randomly come on, that people might like knowing that I'm going to come on at a certain point. Doing once a week would be way too much for me right now of like scheduling and committing. But the one thing I did think of doing, if there is anyone out there that enjoys Lunatic live and wants to be able to watch it live, I thought maybe I could commit to coming on once a month. And I noticed I did do a short live stream on the last full moon, the one called Vernal Equinox. That was a full moon. So I was thinking maybe I'll maybe I'll see if I could commit to going live on every full moon. And the time of day for me that would work best overall would probably be midnight. So I'm like Eastern Standard Time. So I think I'll try this. It's not quite a promise yet, but I think I'm going to try to go live at midnight Eastern Standard Time on every full moon. And that way, if there is someone out there who just is always at work when I go live or sleeping, and does want to catch it, that they'll know there's a certain time I do go on. So you guys can let me know what you think of that. I've considered like committing to being live, doing Lunatic live, like just me like this, on every full moon. B Daddy Rap says, I think whenever you're inspired and see if anything happens when you're streaming. Yeah, okay. So again, like some advice to go with the flow of it. Boy Meets Wart, totally get that, and really love the yin and yang you guys as hosts. Yeah, me and Ryan work well together. Just sort of me being the chaos and the order. Like on so many things, we're totally in vibe. Like he's just as honest as me, and there's so many things that we totally agree with. And then we've got these other things where we're polar opposite. It seems to be working out well so far. And yeah, both me and Ryan are very happy with each other. Like as far as what he's done on the channel so far, even the mistakes he made and how he dealt with it, I couldn't be more pleased with Ryan. I'm really proud of him as a partner. He's doing great. And as far as our like interaction between each other, this isn't causing any friction. It's going well. So yeah, I think we make a good team. Old God says, just come on anytime. I feel I have something to say. Anytime, exclamation point. Okay, thanks for the feedback. Duva Kun, sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that. It can get too much. I tried being subscribed to TYT. Is that the Young Turks? But they kept putting out 10 videos a day, and even though I didn't watch them all, it cluttered up my sub box. A more reasonable number sounds okay, though. Okay, so some feedback that at least, like what Ryan was worried about, some people are like that. So we will definitely not go up to 10 videos a day. Actually, shit, I don't know what's ever going to happen. I won't make that a promise. But I don't see us going up to 10 videos a day. But then again, who knows what the fuck's going to happen. But yeah, I don't think... I don't think we'll go too out of control with content. On the other hand, if we're putting out too much, just don't watch. And I never want to annoy anyone. Like seriously, I don't want to be annoying. I'm not desperate for attention. I just want to be here for people who enjoy my presence. So Boy Meets Wart says the full moon idea is awesome. Okay, so again, no promises yet. For me, having anything scheduled and a scheduled commitment is very, very hard on me. It's like even with my family, and like my parents live just up the road. They're the next farm over. Like I can't see their house from here, but even if it's like it's someone's birthday and the family's getting together over at the farm, and I say, my family will ask, you feel up to going, to whatever. Even if I agree to go to something, it's just always... Everyone understands that if I don't sleep well the night before, I wake up and depression or anxiety are out of control, I might have to back out at any point. It's really hard for me to commit to something because then I just get more and more worried. Like, what if I get stressed out the night before, barely sleep, have night terrors, wake up freaking out? And the pressure of I have to do this can sometimes be wearing on me. But I think maybe the just coming on live full moons at midnight, I will aim for that, but always also with everything. Another reason me and Ryan work well together is if we have a scheduled call, because when we talk to Nolan or James, we scheduled that. It's a little easier on me knowing that, wait, I will call her back in just a second. It's easier knowing that if I woke up that day and just totally couldn't handle it, Ryan also is like my family, that he's said, yeah, if I've committed to something, but then I'm just not in a good state, don't worry about it. Just call me, let me know, and I'll handle it. So that's taken the edge off that. But without it being like a full promise or anything, I'm not sure how far we are from the next full moon, but I'll see if I can handle going live at midnight Eastern Standard Time every full moon. And that might not be too much for me. Really cool idea. Sounds very appropriate considering the name. Yeah, I think so. And so my wife just called, and yeah, I am supposed to get to work trying to get some shit in my house cleaned up. So as far as sorting myself goes, I'm also, pushing myself with that at the moment. So I'm going to get going and don't want to be in trouble with my wife. So I'm going to go do some chores, work on sorting my shit out. Thank you so much to everyone. Like, you guys are fucking awesome. It's awesome people showing up here. So I've really enjoyed talking to you guys today. And I hope everyone has a fantastic day. Love and blessings to everyone. And I'll see you again when I see you.